Azuri's night market was a blur of lamps and spice when Asha said it, cold and flat. Jabari could not move. She told him to leave their flat, leave her life. In the same breath, he took out his phone and, with fingers that shook, cancelled every payment that had kept her clinic, rent, running. The screen glowed, a single tap cracked the city's quiet. People noticed. A guest posted a screenshot. At a family party in Zawadi Heights she had shouted him down, called him worthless, and ordered him to go. Humiliated, angry, he hit back the only way he knew that would hurt, money. The screenshot flew through feeds and cafes. Friends picked sides. Landlords called. Suppliers sent overdue notices. Asha's careful image began to peel away in public. Jabari, scrolling through old messages and bank transfers, found things that made him dizzy, unpaid loans she had hidden, a secret venture taking money, a pact with someone powerful. Sympathy wavered. It was messy, and people debated on radio and in the plaza, who was wrong, who was used. Asha answered with lawyers and threats, Jabari leaked the ledgers. The town watched as money and reputation became weapons. At the courthouse steps, with cameras rolling, he had a choice, keep tearing her down or tell the whole truth and take what came. Azuri changed around them, some doors closed, some opened, and the city learned how fragile love looks when balance tips into debt and pride. Jabari once believed love could carry any weight. When he first met Asha, she spoke with a fire that made him believe in her dream. She wanted a clinic in Kimbali Heights, a place where mothers and children could come without fear of the bills. Jabari listened, and without thinking twice, he put his savings on the line. He mortgaged what little he owned, wired deposits, signed papers, and handed over the kind of support most men would hesitate to risk. To him, it felt noble, even romantic. He thought sacrifice was another word for love. Every late-night phone call from her, every worried sigh about tuition, supplies, or rent, he answered with money. He wired payments before she even asked. When her landlord threatened eviction, he covered the balance. When her younger brother needed school fees, he sent the transfer before she could finish explaining. Friends warned him, but he only smiled and said, "She needs me." But as the months passed, the balance between them shifted in ways he didn't want to see. The clinic walls stood, but the numbers on his accounts thinned. The bills in her name seemed to echo in his pocket. Their life together became stitched together with payments he made in silence. She decorated their flat with things he paid for, she drove a car he financed, and the daily rhythm of their love was marked by transactions. What looked like devotion from the outside was, on the inside, a fragile structure built on money flowing one way. Jabari tried to believe it was temporary, that once the clinic grew, once her career blossomed, they would be equals again. But the ledger told another story. It showed dependency, not partnership. In quiet moments, he felt the weight of it, though he never said a word. He told himself her success would be their success, her victories would pay back what he had given. Still, a small voice inside whispered doubts. Was this really love, or was it debt disguised as devotion? Each time she kissed his cheek and thanked him, he silenced the voice. Each time she promised tomorrow would be better, he believed. He wanted so badly to trust that love would balance the books in the end. What he didn't see, or chose not to see, was how fragile this arrangement really was. It only needed one sharp word, one final break, for everything to collapse. And when that moment finally came, it wasn't just a heartbreak, it was the crumbling of the entire foundation they had built together, a foundation made not of trust alone but of payments, receipts, and the quiet hope that money could hold love steady. The night at Zawadi Heights began like any other family gathering, warm lights, loud laughter, plates passed around, the kind of noise that makes small-town secrets pretend to hide. Jabari had come thinking it would be simple. He wanted to keep peace, to stand beside Asha while she talked about the clinic, to smile through the music and the food. Instead she stood up in the middle of the room and tore him down. Her voice was sharp and public. She called him names he had never heard from her, pointed at him in front of cousins and old neighbors, and told him to leave their flat right then. The room froze on his face. He felt a hot shame that was louder than the band. People shifted on chairs. Someone laughed awkwardly. Someone else filmed on their phone. Jabari left, not because he wanted to, but because her words pushed him out like a shove. Outside, the night air was thin and heavy. He waited on the steps, feeling every eye on him through the glass. Heat and rage mixed inside him. For months he had held the bills, the transfers, the quiet payments that kept things running. They were never meant to be weapons, but on that step he saw them like a ledger of his love and his humiliation. He opened his phone with a hand that trembled and turned off the auto payments he had set up for rent, utilities, clinic supplies, tuition. It was a small, modern act. It was also sharp and final. He did not shout. He did not throw anything. He tapped the screen and a confirmation flashed. A single screenshot of that moment, the confirmation bar and the date, left the phone that night. It traveled fast. In Bali people shared it over coffee, over benches, over the same group chats that had once posted baby pictures and recipes. The screenshot landed on feeds and then in the feeds of feeds. Hashtags picked it up like sparks. Friends messaged him words that stung and words that comforted. People chose sides with quick, loud certainties. Landlords and suppliers noticed overdue stamps. The clinic, which had been a quiet, noble place of bandages and soft voices, suddenly had a headline. Asha's carefully managed image began to crack under the weight of angry comments and sympathetic notes. Some called Jabari cruel. Others said he had been pushed too far. The family party became a story told in cafes and on late-night radio. Old neighbors replayed every scene with new details. At the center of it all, Jabari realized the power of one small, modern gesture. A single tap had become evidence, accusation, proof and confession. It showed the calculus of their life together, and it forced strangers to choose who to believe. The city watched. The city whispered. The simple act of canceling payments turned private hurt into public drama, and in the space between the next post and the next repost, both of them began to lose control of the story. News moved through Mbali like hot steam from a kettle, quick and impossible to catch. The screenshot of Jabari canceling payments sat on phones and tables and in the hands of baristas before dawn. At the corner cafes people argued over it between sips, some saying he was cruel, others saying he finally stood up for himself. Old friends who once shared jokes with the couple split into quiet groups, sending private messages and posting short judgments. Landlords who had been patient suddenly called about late rent. Suppliers who delivered clinic supplies left terse texts about unpaid invoices. Asha's bookings and speaking invitations began to wobble because organizers did not want trouble. Her carefully chosen posts and smiling photos, the image she had built for donors and patients, began to wobble under new comments and private facts. Small bills that had been easy to settle turned into a chain reaction. One overdue notice led to another. One phone call led to a contract being paused. People who had once praised her work now whispered in the market about whether she had lied about money. The town radio played callers who sounded sure they understood everything when they only knew part of it. Hashtags popped up, some cruel and some protective, and they made it easy for strangers to pick a side without knowing the full story. Neighborhood loyalties hardened. Families who had hosted them for meals took positions. The clinic's regular patients began to ask questions at the door. Volunteers who painted the waiting room felt uneasy. Donors asked for receipts. The city's small power brokers watched and chose quietly. A local blogger printed a list of transactions that he said proved a pattern. A friend of Asha's wrote a long post defending her and demanding privacy, and that post gathered its own readers. Each new note, each forwarded message, changed how people saw both of them. When a supplier put a lock on a delivery truck until payment cleared, the situation turned practical and urgent. When a landlord threatened eviction for another tenant because of missed rent, gossip mixed with fear. The drama slipped from personal to economic, and then to political in the way neighbors talked about respect, fairness, and who pays for what in a relationship. In weeks the city's mood shifted from curious to tense. Meetings at the clinic grew shorter and colder. Jabari found messages that praised him and others that wanted him judged. Asha's calendar thinned. The story stopped being about two people alone and became about how a town sorts blame when money and pride collide. Small shocks kept landing and every one of them sent out new ripples until the whole neighborhood could feel the tremor. Jabari did not expect to find much when he started looking through old files and messages. He had been angry, hurt, and exhausted, but curiosity drove him. At first, he just wanted to understand how far things had gone. As he flipped through emails, scanned invoices, and checked bank statements, small surprises turned into sharp shocks. There were loans Asha had never mentioned, loans he realized he had been quietly covering for her without knowing it. Then he found transactions moving money out of the clinic account into something called Kimbali Partners, a venture he had never heard of, a project that seemed to benefit someone else, someone powerful who no one talked about. Each line made his chest tighten. He compared dates with the payments he had been making, the tuition he covered, the clinic bills he wired. It was like seeing a hidden map of their life, one drawn in secrecy. His anger shifted from humiliation to disbelief. How had he missed this? He began asking questions, quietly, testing answers. The more he dug, the more the picture changed. The money he thought had been flowing just to keep her afloat had been redirected in ways he could not have imagined. There were letters and agreements he had never seen, some signed with a patron whose influence stretched across town. Suddenly, the narrative everyone had been following, Asha as the wronged one, him as the furious ex, felt incomplete. Sympathy became complicated. He remembered the party in Zawadi Heights, the public humiliation, and now he saw the ledgers behind it, showing choices she had made and secrets she had kept. It was no longer a simple story of heartbreak and revenge. This revelation forced him to reconsider every interaction, every kind word, every demand for money he had fulfilled. Was he a victim, or had he been unknowingly funding someone else's plan? Was she simply ambitious, or was she manipulating everyone around her? The answers were not clear, and that uncertainty made every decision heavier. He realized the moral stakes were higher than just money or pride. This was about truth, accountability, and power. The city had already picked sides, but now the lines blurred. Every friend who had judged too quickly, every neighbor who whispered, every social media post, all of it seemed partial, incomplete, misleading. Jabari knew what came next would not just be another argument. It would be a showdown that tested morality, trust, and the very nature of their past together. He had the evidence now, the hidden ledgers that reframed everything. What he chose to do with them would decide not only their futures but also how the city would remember the scandal that had already gone viral. The quiet work of uncovering truth had set the stage for a storm nobody could ignore. The tension that had simmered quietly through Mbali now boiled over. Asha, feeling the sting of humiliation and the threat to her reputation, responded quickly. She sent lawyers letters to Jabari, threatening lawsuits for defamation, breach of privacy, and any financial misstep she could claim. At the same time, her social media accounts and carefully managed profiles launched subtle campaigns, posts that hinted at betrayal, stories that painted her as the wronged woman, whispers that spread like wildfire. The town watched closely. Neighbors, friends, and former supporters took sides as if the drama were a sport, and every new post or message became fuel for debate. Jabari did not back down. He had the ledgers, the hidden documents, and evidence that reframed the story. Quietly at first, he shared them with close allies, people who had influence, people who could verify facts and add weight to his side. Then he began leaking the evidence more publicly. Screenshots of loans, bank statements, and agreements started circulating. Each leak forced the city to reconsider what they thought they knew. Supporters rallied on both sides. Cafes, streets, and online forums turned into battlefields of argument. Every coffee table conversation seemed to carry the question, who was telling the truth? Who had been manipulating who? The simmering debates could not stay private for long. A local television station caught wind of the story, and suddenly the conflict was live, in real time. A town square meeting was broadcast for all to see. Families, neighbors, and curious citizens filled the square as cameras rolled. Jabari and Asha faced each other under the glare of microphones, lights, and public expectation. Finances were no longer hidden numbers, they became courtroom exhibits, flashed across screens for all to interpret. Emotional arguments unfolded like theater. Every claim, every denial, every accusation became public spectacle. People leaned out of windows, gathered in cafes, and watched online, the city buzzing with the drama of two lives colliding over money, pride, and secrets. The escalation transformed personal betrayal into a public trial. Neither Jabari nor Asha could retreat without appearing weak, and every action, every word, carried weight far beyond the individuals involved. Social media posts, legal threats, and courtroom-style presentations tangled together, turning the scandal into a viral storm. What had started as a broken relationship had become a war over reputation, control, and truth. The city no longer whispered, it roared. And in the middle of it, both of them realized that the story had grown larger than love or money, it was now a spectacle that everyone, willingly or not, was watching unfold. The day of the confrontation arrived with a strange weight in the air. At Kigoma Plaza, a crowd had gathered, cameras and phones ready, people leaning on railings and walls to see the drama unfold. Jabari stood at the center, the late morning sun glinting off the courthouse steps, heart hammering, palms damp. Asha was there too, composed but sharp-eyed, scanning the crowd as if measuring every reaction. Between them lay months of tension, whispers, viral posts, cancelled payments, hidden ledgers, and legal threats. Everything that had once been private was now public, and everyone in the plaza seemed to hold judgment like a living weight. Jabari knew the moment demanded more than words. He could continue the vendetta, throw accusations and evidence at her, watch reputations shatter, and satisfy a personal need for revenge. But he also saw the cost: friendships destroyed, business ties broken, the city split into camps, and a piece of himself lost forever in the anger. On the other hand, exposing everything with transparency could reclaim his dignity and reveal the truth, but it was risky. It meant showing the world how deep the entanglement had gone, how much of the money had flowed between them, and how complicated the moral picture really was. Either choice would change life irreversibly. He looked at Asha, and she met his gaze without flinching, the years of shared life flashing between them in silence. The crowd held its breath. Phones hovered, ready to capture every gesture. Every reporter, every neighbor, every friend and enemy waited for the signal that would turn months of speculation into fact. Jabari reached into his pocket, feeling the weight of the cancelled payments, the confirmation still glowing on his phone. That small, modern act had started it all, and now it could become a symbol of honesty or weaponized revenge. He stepped forward and took a deep breath, deciding how much to reveal, how much to keep. Words poured out. Measured, precise, and public, a recounting of facts mixed with acknowledgement of mistakes and truths about hidden debts and secret dealings. The crowd listened, the cameras recorded, and social media feeds exploded in real time. Asha responded, sharp and confident, but the narrative had shifted, the moral clarity was no longer hers alone. When Jabari finally lowered his phone, the decision was made. The confrontation had ended, and the outcome could not be undone. The plaza was alive with whispers, cheers, and questions, but in that moment, both of them realized that nothing would ever be private again. Their lives, their reputations, and their city had been forever changed, caught between vindication and ruin, transparency and chaos. The days after the confrontation felt strange and quiet, as if the city itself was catching its breath. Social media feeds were still buzzing, news outlets replaying clips of the town hall and courthouse steps, hashtags lingering like shadows over Mbali. Jabari walked carefully through streets that had once felt familiar. Now people's eyes followed him with curiosity, suspicion, and respect. Some neighbors whispered about his courage, others about his recklessness. Friends who had picked sides slowly reconnected or drifted away, alliances breaking and reshaping like shifting sand. Asha's image, once polished and untouchable, was scratched, her patrons and donors cautious, and the clinic's rhythm changed under new scrutiny. Money moved differently too. Debts that had once been invisible became urgent, obligations were recalculated, and some former supporters withdrew entirely while others offered unexpected help. The hidden ledgers, leaked and examined, had changed the balance of trust in ways no one could reverse. In quiet corners, people debated who was right, who was wrong, and who had been honest. The story of love, betrayal, and money had become a warning everyone remembered. For Jabari, the aftermath was a mixture of relief and uncertainty. He had exposed the truth and reclaimed some dignity, but the cost was heavy. Friends were gone, reputations were scarred, and personal life would never feel simple again. Yet in the chaos, he found a strange sense of freedom, the weight of unspoken lies lifted, even if only partially. The city of Azuri itself had changed. Neighborhoods were more alert, conversations more cautious, and everyone carried a lesson about the fragility of trust and the consequences of mixing love with money and power. What had begun as a private heartbreak had transformed into a viral, cautionary tale. The final images. Jabari walking alone through a now familiar night market, Asha confronting the challenges of her clinic, and the city buzzing with memory and gossip, showed a place reshaped by scandal, choices, and the irreversible consequences of walking out. The story lingered like a warning: nothing private stays hidden, and the price of leaving can ripple farther than anyone imagines.